My name is Steve Gleit.
Hi, I'm Andy Josie.
My passion is motorcycle riding and American history. My best friend Andy and I are two Wheelin America in search of cool backroad destinations and hidden stories of America's past.
I come from a small town in the northeast of England called Wallsend. I came to America on a motorcycle tour and I haven't looked back since. I'm so excited to discover the great destinations and rich history America has.
For us, it's all about the untold stories
And the secret past of America's cities and towns.
Join us as we take a road trip back in time and uncover America's rich history you never knew existed. We're two Wheelin America. Today's ride's gonna be fantastic. I decided to take Andy on what I call the Lake Hughes Loop. It's a great ride that starts out about an hour north of Los Angeles. There are 3 very interesting and historic stops along the way.
Steve called and said, "Get your bike ready, Andy. We're going for a ride." Sounds good to me, man. I'm in.
Hey, the next stop is about a mile down the road. It's called the Rock Inn. We're gonna go there for breakfast.
Cool.
The Rock Inn was built by Joel Hurt Sr. in 1927. First, it was a wood structure, and then it was built of steel, concrete, and rock to make sure it wouldn't burn down again. It started out as the Lake Hughes trading post. It's been everything from a market to a post office and even a gas station. I called the owner. He and his wife are meeting us for breakfast. Hi, you guys.
Hi.
How you doing today?
Good.
I'm
How you
Steve.
doing? Warren. This is
Warren, nice to
Wendy.
meet you.
Hi.
Wendy.
Nice to meet you.
Hi. This is my friend Andy.
Andy.
Hi, Andy.
Hey,
Nice
How's
to
the
meet
ride
you.
up today?
Oh, it couldn't have been any better. It was just beautiful.
All right, great. Come on in.
Right away, I felt at home. I knew this was going to be a good breakfast filled with some great stories.
So this is now a hotel and bar, yeah?
Yes,
Okay. How many rooms?
6. We have 6 rooms.
Now, didn't it used to be a bunch of movie stars that came out here, like, because this was like a hideaway for rich and famous would come out here?
They say in the 30s and 40s you can get anything you wanted out here.
And when you go up and look at the hotel rooms, you'll see that there's 2 little rooms. There's one room that's like a sitting room, and then there's a passway that you can go, and then there's a room with a sink. So I'm thinking there's an entertaining room and an entertaining room.
Do you guys want to get something to eat?
Sure, yeah. I'll have the ham, steak, and eggs, please.
From day one, motorcycles were coming up here, and it's just been evolved as that kind of place for bikes to come. And through that, we've gotten other people too. So now we've recreated it to be a welcome spot for everybody, but we get a good variety of dirt bikes, sport bikes, dual sports, the Harley riders, and we've got a lot of families and things coming up now too.
A lot of people just don't know that this is in their own backyard. We had a history teacher come up here, and she was blown away.
Who was the guy that brought the pictures up? He had his birthday here. He grew up here and was gone and came back.
He had his 21st and his 80th
Yeah,
birthday here.
yeah.
That's really cool.
That was cute.
It's nice getting here, and it's nice when you're here, and it's nice going back. So, and it's
Well,
kind of all the way around.
That's another beautiful thing about it is you can take a different route here and home every time you come. There's so many roads. You've got Bouquet, you've got San Francisco, you've got Lake Hughes, you've got the 138. You can take a lot of different ways. And during the different seasons, it's nice to be able to see how it changes.
Yeah.
Because in the fall, when the leaves change, it's gorgeous up here.
Oh, bad.
It's really pretty.
Thank you, sir.
Steve and Andy are funny. They made me laugh. I'm glad that Steve's my little translator because half the time I can't understand Andy.
Oh, what a great place, huh?
Yeah, it was
Look
absolutely
at
awesome.
this. Breakfast was awesome.
Yeah, it was good. It tasted fantastic, but it didn't get exactly what I wanted.
What did you order?
I ordered ham, steak, and eggs.
You wanted ham and steak and eggs.
Yeah.
Come on.
This is actually the second time this has happened to me. I must remember that in America, a ham steak is a piece of ham.
So we came up Lake Hughes Road, turned onto Lake Elizabeth Road, and now we'll continue the loop by heading down San Francisco Canyon. The next stop is a place I've always wanted to learn more about. It's the site of the second most catastrophic disaster in California history, next to the 1906 San Francisco earthquake. The place we are stopping at is known as the St. Francis Dam site. This is where a significant reservoir and dam was built back in 1926. They were built to provide a one-year water supply to Los Angeles. On March 12, 1928, around midnight, the dam collapsed, causing a massive flood that killed hundreds and caused millions of dollars in destruction. We're going to meet up with a local expert on the story, Mr. Frank Rock. Hi, I'm Steve.
Frank Rock.
Frank, nice to meet you, and this is Andy.
Hey Frank,
Good
I'm
to
Andy.
meet you, Steve. Good to meet you.
We've been doing a little research on the Francis Dam, and we hear you're the expert.
I've been told yes.
Great, can you take some time and share some stuff with us?
My pleasure, anytime.
That would be great. Frank Rock is pretty much the go-to guy for this. He can usually be found at the site giving a tour to a group of enthusiasts or just out searching for new clues and artifacts.
I grew up in the area from the time I was 10, actually, and always knew about St. Francis, but just knew that it was just one of the old legends from here in town. I was always interested in disasters, whether it was Titanic or Custer's battlefield. I always had a draw towards it. And this is right here in our own backyard.
Okay, where we're standing right now is what used to be called a little community called LeBrun's. This was a staging area for the Lake Elizabeth Tunnel, which was part of the LA Aqueduct at the time. And when William Mulholland was out here, he noticed that this was a flat plain area and a perfect V area for a dam.
William Mulholland came to Los Angeles in 1877. He was a self-taught engineer who was responsible for bringing water to the city of LA.
So what we're looking at right now is where the St. Francis Dam stood, that gap in the hill over there.
That was actually the dam?
That was where the dam stood, and that was what was called the wing dike up on that ridge over there, which was an extension of the main dam that you see over there.
Wow. Can we go down there?
Absolutely.
This place doesn't look like much now, but what we're about to find out is how important this area actually was to the turn of the 20th century.
I have no idea what to expect. I've never even heard of this place. Doesn't look as if it's hiding much.
William Mulholland loved the fact that he had that narrow canyon up ahead there, which would be perfect for the dam itself, which fanned out into this big wide plain going back 3 miles up the canyon here. So they bought the rights to the area, did some tests on the hillsides to make sure that it would retain the water. And then so they changed the design of the dam a year after the design phase to add another 10 feet to the
In
height.
height.
In height. And then a year after the construction started, they added another 10 feet up to the along the ridge line to coincide with the rainfall statistics of those 2 years. And so problem was when they did that extension up, that they didn't expand the base of the dam.
The 20 feet added to the height of the dam is one of the main reasons for the dam's destruction. As I understand it, design and construction of dams changed drastically right after the failure of the St. Francis.
But the dam came from that V section, did a curve around, and locked into this side of the hillside here. You can see all this red conglomerate here.
Oh,
It
yeah.
was very turgid when it was soaked with water. But
And you can see some of the concrete.
yeah, so it locked into what was called the thrust block, where the main structure of the dam locked in, which stood about another 15 feet above the hillside here. Over here would be what is left of the main structure of the St. Francis Dam.
It doesn't look like much if you don't know what you're looking at, but in the dirt, you can still see remains of the dam after all these years.
Seeing pieces of the dam sticking out of the ground gave me chills. Standing there, it's hard to believe the forces that took this thing down.
What's definitive is right over here, you can see these scallop formations sticking straight up out of the debris.
Yeah.
That was the face of the dam. That whole section and the debris on top of it is how it was 84 years ago. That's that same debris. That hasn't filled in. That section came from that area abutted up against the hillside. Came down, scoured against the face of the dam. The water was coming out at 1.7 million gallons per second, they estimated.
So how much water actually went through the dam on the night?
38,000 acre feet, which estimates out to 12 billion gallons.
12 billion gallons.
Right. It held back a reservoir nearly 3 miles long, and the reservoir drained in 70 minutes. So the day before the dam broke, the dam keeper, Tony Harnessfeger, had some concerns about a leak that had been coming out of the west side abutment of the dam. So on the morning of March 12th, Harnessfeger called down to William Mulholland and told him his concerns. That morning, Mulholland came out with his chief engineer. They did a cursory inspection.
Well, unfortunately, the winds that day were blowing so hard downstream, they were forcing water through the spillways over the face of the dam. It was hard to tell what was spillage and what was a leak. Mulholland, though, was confident, this is the driest dam I've ever built. All dams leak.
Whether or not he thought it was actually going to break, or he just didn't want to cause an unneeded panic, is anybody's interpretation. 3 minutes before midnight, the lights in Los Angeles sort of flickered because of the fact that the St. Francis had just dropped, took down the Boral power line, which took power to LA and to Lancaster. So about 5 minutes later, the floodwaters at 18 miles an hour found their way down to Power Station 2.
There are 2 power stations in the area. Power station number 1 is about 4.5 miles upstream from the dam, and power station number 2 is a little over a mile below. The chief of operations, Lou Burns, was working that night and on the phone when the floodwaters hit and completely destroyed power station number 2.
So in the log for that night, it says, St. Francis Dam has gone out, your lake is dry. Floodwaters just took out power station.
Oh my God.
And the entire community. There were 70 people down in the community, and 67 were killed. The one thing I pointed out already was the scallops and the debris and that spillway. Those are the things that you can line up old pictures with and just give yourself an estimation of where the actual center section stood. So they had several investigations going on the week after the dam broke. So what they did is they gave all the major blocks and minor blocks numbers, and then pieced those together like a puzzle, so that they could put it back together and determine what forces were at bay as far as what tore up the dam, and so that way they could ascertain, why St. Francis went down. So if you guys are in the mood for a hike, we can go up on the rim here and get a better view of the dam and how the structure went out.
Love to.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right then.
Wow, what a view.
There it is.
Wow.
You get a nice overall shot of what was the old road, where she stood, how she went down. And there's where St. Francis stood. We were just down there. Now, for years there was some speculation as to how St. Francis went down. But in 1992, J. David Rogers, one of the most renowned forensics geologists in the world, came up with a scenario that is pretty much accepted now as to how it happened. St. Francis is what I call the epitome of an accident or a disaster waiting to happen, because it had so many forces working against it. First, you had what was called a Paleolithic landslide on the east side of the canyon that the dam was abutted on. A Paleolithic landslide was actually the mountain was in a constant state of movement. As early as a week before the disaster, people had reported that the Beeline Road, the road further up that is still in use today, had shifted maybe about 6 inches.
Wow.
The night before the dam broke, reports of San Francisco Canyon Road, the main road over the dam, had dropped a whole foot. So it had started. Now, not only had you had this force working against you, you had what was a new science or a new theory called uplift theory. The entire weight of the reservoir was forcing its way up underneath the dam. So you had this uplift pressure coming from underneath the dam. And then the last was the west abutment here, which was saturated with the record rainfall they had that year. And it was pressing against the west side of the dam. So you had forces on 3 sides. So it didn't have a prayer.
So the east side of the dam collapsed first, due to the constant movement of the hillside. Then the center section lifted and tilted forward a bit, caused by the weight of the water and the uplift pressure. The center section twisted, which caused the west side abutment to crack and crumble away. At the time, no one could have seen this coming, unfortunately.
How high would that water have been when it came out of here?
Roughly about 150 to 180 feet. and it just tore up everything in its path. It was just debris. It just, you had the pristine lake water coming out, and by the time it got down to Power Station 2, it had chewed up every piece of foliage, loose gravel.
Took everything with it.
Took everything with it, right.
So Frank, from beyond this point, where did the water end up?
Well, the water continued down the canyon here, San Francisco Canyon, exited out into the area which is now Castaic, and followed what is today the 126 out the Santa Clara River Basin. Passed through an area called Kemp, where there was an Edison Power camp, where 84 men were drowned in their sleep, and that carried on in through past Piru into Fillmore, where Fillmore had about 60, 70 casualties. At that point was the widest point of the flood, like about 2 to 3 miles. Kept on funneling down past Santa Paula, Satacoy, then out El Rio into the Pacific Ocean.
Based on where the water traveled, Andy and I are going to follow the path which will take us into Santa Paula. From there, we will head to the beach in Ventura, where the water met up with the Pacific Ocean. Frank, thank you so much for taking the time today and showing us this amazing place. Everything I've read about it did it no justice. It's so humbling seeing it in person.
Oh, my
Thank
pleasure.
you again.
My pleasure.
Hey,
both of
thanks,
you.
Frank. Been a good day, man.
Thank you, Andy.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Now Andy and I are following pretty close to the exact path the water took as it rushed towards Ventura. It took about 75 minutes for the water to flood down to the lower part of San Francisco Canyon. Near Valencia, California, the flood water met up with the Santa Clara River and the mass headed west towards the ocean. The water continued down the Santa Clara River Valley, heading straight for a town called Fillmore, and on to where we're headed now, Santa Paula. We are meeting up with John Nichols, a local historian. He's lived in Santa Paula since 1974 and is the expert relating to the disaster as it happened downstream.
So we pull up in front of a statue depicting 2 motorcycle riders sitting on vintage bikes. I have no idea what this is about, but cannot wait to find out.
You must be John Nichols.
I'm John. Hi.
John, nice to meet you. I'm Steve.
Hi, Steve.
This is Andy.
I'm Andy. Hi, Andy.
We've just come back from the St. Francis Dam, meeting Frank Rock. He gave us an amazing tour of the dam and the site. It was actually a very humbling experience, seeing all of what went on there. And so now we're following the path of the destruction, and that's what brought us here to meet you.
Here. So it's a pretty dramatic ride when you know that the water of the flood also flowed the same route you were traveling. The dam collapsed a few minutes before midnight, and it took 3 hours to get to Santa Paula. The warnings didn't start coming till about 1:30 in the evening, and then everybody sprang into action to warn their fellow citizens to get to high ground because they did not know how high the waters were. The waters ended up being high enough to knock out the bridges all up and down the valley.
How high was the water when it got here?
Well, it's variable. At the dam site, you've probably been told that it was 185 feet high.
Yeah.
And then it immediately washed down, and by the time it got to the ocean, it was just a few feet. In Santa Paula, I think it was about 18 feet high.
Wow.
So to warn people of that, Thornton Edwards started riding his Harley, and he came up with the idea of going down the street, knocking on one house saying, you warn your neighbors on your left and right. And then you go to the third house down, you warn your neighbors.
So you play like hopscotch?
Hopscotch.
Okay.
So that resulted in a lot of lives saved.
That was smart.
These acts of heroism are going on simultaneously all up and down the valley, from kids to old people, all trying to help their fellow citizens. You know, disasters are tragedy, but they bring out the best in humanity in some cases, and I think that's what this monument represents. It's called the Warning, but it's really dedicated to the spirit of heroism that resides in all of us, not necessarily these two individuals, although they were heroic. As far as lives lost, and we know 450 is an official count, but you don't know how many undocumented people from that area were washed out to sea. Their bodies never found. This was at a time before Social Security cards, before driver's licenses, before checking accounts. So we don't know how many people died. We don't know how many people were saved. So much happened that night to save lives just by warning people to get to higher ground. But then the next morning, as dawn rose, the town had to wake up to the debris, the dead bodies down in the river bottom, and they had to start trying to then save the people that were still survived. So you really never know how many people died in this disaster.
So all the mud and debris snaked its way downstream from the dam site, destroying everything in its path, wiping out 12 bridges and many homes. The rebuild had to be a tremendous effort.
John, it's been an absolute pleasure meeting you. Thank you for taking the time with Andy and I.
Sure.
To explain this
All right,
great structure
great,
to us. We're going to head on and follow the path of destruction.
Okay, stay dry.
Thank you very much. Our last stop today is the beach in Ventura, California, where the Santa Clara River dumps into the ocean. Well, here it is, Andy. The end of the path for 54 miles of destruction. It all ended up here.
What, just here with all this foliages, these reeds?
This whole thing is where the riverbed came out.
Wow.
Can you imagine all the silt and the bodies and the debris that came out here?
Unbelievable, man. Frank Rock did say it pushed so hard it went out 30 miles straight out into the Pacific, and they found bodies as far south as Mexico.
It's just amazing. It's hard to believe. And now it's a beautiful beach.
Today it's just tranquil beauty.
Well, it's a great place to end the ride for today.
Sure is, man. Where to next?
Highway 1.
What part?
All of it.
Sounds good to me, man.
We couldn't have asked for a better day and ride. Stopping at the Rock Inn for breakfast, chatting with the owners Warren and Wendy was great. The highlight today was no doubt the story of the St. Francis Dam. Frank Rock and John Nichols were amazing, and I can't thank them enough for coming out today to share their knowledge about this great piece of American history. I can't wait to see what's next. We'll see you soon on Wheelin America.